Focus. Today we are talking about protein. So the other day I had a client come back to work with me after a few months off and we caught up on their fitness. And the thing I was most interested in what they said was to do with nutrition. They are a female who must weigh no more than 50 kilograms. And she was telling me that she had been tracking her calories and macros, but she was finding it a struggle to get her protein intake in. And it made me a bit curious because she told me she was one, a meat eater, and the second that she was taking a protein shake. So, being someone who tracks their protein intake, especially the last year where I've been trying to recover from an Achilles rupture, I did think I would create something around this because I find it difficult to believe or maybe I should say difficult to understand that she's struggling to get her protein numbers in. So please stick around for the end of this video where I'll share some finer points that are useful to know around protein. But for the bulk of this, we're just going to talk about getting in protein in the two meals I focus on the most, so breakfast and dinner. You can adjust these around your own protein requirement needs, which I'm also going to touch on. So if we take my client who must be at maximum about 50 kilograms, and we use the numbers that are kicking around in the nutrition world of between 1.2 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of weight, and that's lean weight. So if you're overweight, you may want to adjust that number for your protein requirement. And the number I quite like is 1.6. I was using 1.2 for a little while, and I found for me personally, when I've upped to around 1.6, I feel pretty good, and I can still eat that much protein without thinking about it too much throughout the day. So if you take my client as an example, 50 kilograms, which would mean she needs to consume 80 grams of protein per day to hit her requirement, which might sound like a lot, but when you think about having a protein shake and having one lean source of meat a day, you're making substantial progress towards having that. So I want to share with you the ways that I get protein into my diet. And number one is my morning. So I prioritize getting protein in my first meal of the day. So I take a protein shake. The one I take is this one. It's called Bulk. I actually switched this from a number of other ones I tried and stuck with this because the lower protein amounts, I used to take some that, this one in particular gives me 23 grams of protein per serving. And the other ones that were higher tend to give me more gastric discomfort, just didn't feel good. So I've stuck with a lower protein shake that I like the taste of and that I can drink every day. So I use one serving of that with about 200 to 250 milliliters of milk, semi-skim milk in my protein shake. I also put some blueberries in and grind that all up. And that gives me around the 23 grams of protein from the shake itself and about 9 from the milk that I drink and mix in with it, because as we know, milk is a good source of protein as well. So just taking those two, 23 grams plus our 9 from the milk, we have 32 grams of protein in that. I also have 2 eggs. At the moment, I'm just boiling up a bunch of eggs at the start of the week and then I eat them. So an egg can give you between, depending on how big they are, these are, I'd say, at the bottom range of being a large egg and a top range of being a medium-sized egg. So I'd say these are about 7 grams of protein per egg, so 14 grams there. And adding 2 of those eggs, so 14 grams to my already 32 grams of protein, I've got 46 grams of protein from my breakfast. And I don't get much gastric distress from that, actually none at all. And I normally have something else. If you want to see the actual calorie intake, I'm going to pop that on the screen now for you so you can get an idea of calories too. But ultimately, I get about 42, maybe even slightly more grams of protein in for my breakfast. Now, if you remember in the example of my client who's 50 kilograms, she's already well over 50% of the way there towards hitting her daily protein requirement target if we're using 1.6 grams per kilogram. The other way that I like to get protein in is just some lean meat in my dinner. So a chicken breast, which can weigh anything from 120 grams to a really large one, maybe 200 grams, gives you a really good source of protein. So if we take the example of just a small chicken breast of about 120 grams, This gives you around 37 grams of protein for that chicken serving. Now, if you're mixing this in with other things like vegetables, rice, they all provide a small amount of protein too. That will probably take your protein intake up to around 40 for that meal, if not slightly more. So let's say from dinner and eating a lean source of protein and not a huge portion, we can get around 40 grams of protein in there too. So combining that with breakfast, we've already exceeded our 80-gram target that my client would have. Now, of course, many of us don't weigh 50 kilograms. We weigh significantly more. For me, for instance, I weigh just under 80 kilograms at the moment. And my protein requirement is therefore substantially higher. So I like to aim for about 120 grams of protein a day. And that's a nice range for me. Now, the ways that I can do this, and just to flex what I'm already doing, is to increase the size of my protein portion in the evening. But let's not forget, I also have lunch. The only thing I've covered in this video are 2 meals, which are breakfast and dinner. My lunch will easily make up for that protein shortfall if I'm having one. So yeah, as long as I include some protein in my lunch and perhaps snacks throughout the day, I will be hitting 120 grams pretty easily. Being a meat eater, it's quite convenient to do. The other 2 points I want to mention around trying to optimize your protein intake, which I think are important, are the timing of protein. So you overnight are effectively doing a fast when you're sleeping because you're not eating. So you become catabolic. There's a breakdown of proteins, etc. So it's important that your first meal of the day, according to nutrition science as we have it at this moment, is for it to have a nice portion of protein. So you can kickstart the process of rebuilding your muscles first thing in the morning. The same idea goes around having a nice source of protein for your dinner. Again, just before you start a fast of sleeping overnight, it's nice to have some protein there for your body to be using. Also, the gap between breakfast and dinner seems to be quite useful because once we activate protein synthesis in the body, there seems to be a bit of a capacity and a time lag before we want to have our next source of protein. So that seems to be a nice way of arranging your protein intake. The other thing that was useful, which I've learned more recently, is around the amino acid breakdown of proteins you have. So leucine is an amino acid that's in protein, which are proteins are made up of amino acids. And this acts as a signaling mechanism to your body to start muscle generation, muscle synthesis. So you need this present in the proteins you're eating in order for your body to get that signal to start building muscles. This is present in meats in a good enough quantity that you don't have to focus too much on it. It's also, from what I just read quickly, present in whey protein, and the proportions can vary, but around 10%. So if you're having 30 grams of protein from your whey protein, you're probably getting enough leucine in there as a signaling mechanism to start muscle growth, muscle synthesis. I actually bought leucine a very long time ago when I injured my Achilles, and I throw 3 grams of that into my morning shake anyways, which might be a good idea because my protein shake only gives me 23 grams. So if I was to take 10% of that, maybe 2 grams of that is leucine, and a little bit more probably can't hurt. I think the final point to note is remember that protein is a fixed number in your diet that's dependent on your weight. Depending on the style of eating you want to embrace, you may vary the amount of fats and carbohydrates you decide to eat, but protein should be a fixed number, and the proportions of fats and carbohydrates can change. If it's useful, I'm going to think about linking a Google Sheet into this video where you can simply punch in some numbers, your weight, etc., to adjust the proportions you may want to be thinking about to get your protein intake for the day. If it's not there in the description, please comment below. If it's useful, I'll make sure I take some time out there to post it in there for you. That's it for this video. I hope it's useful. I may send it to my client who was inspiration for this video, and I hope you get enough protein in. Thanks for watching. Yeah, hope you find it useful.